For those who are not familiar with toxic and feminine energy, can you describe what each of those are like?
Yeah, so, I talk a lot about how most of us are doing a dance between our wounded masculine and our wounded feminine energetics. And as I was saying, with like the wounded masculine energy, it's a lot of what our culture, especially in Western culture, really sort of prioritizes, holds value around. It's sort of, competitive energy, that whole like John Wayne, pull yourself up by your bootstraps,
Hmm.
isolation, that it's weak to be vulnerable or to allow people to see you, and that we have to sort of like gauge our life by how it looks from the outside versus how it actually feels on the inside. So a lot of times you'll hear people talk about things like attachment styles. And if we
Hmm.
think about it in terms of attachment energy, the wounded masculine energy is the more avoidant energy that exists within all of us. So it's like afraid of love, afraid of failure, controls life by keeping people away, that sort of energetic, right? Now, the wounded feminine energy that most of us are really conditioned to hold with a lot of contempt, even though it's energy that all of us have within us, is the energy of insecurity, sort of people pleasing, outsourcing our power, needing that external validation to feel like we are enough. Um, the energetic of the anxious energy. A lot of times, if we think about it in terms of attachment style, that's our more wounded feminine energy. And so,
Oh,
what I started
interesting.
to yeah. And so again, these energetics aren't gendered. And that's like a really important point because if we think about the ways that we're conditioned to think about gender, a lot of times we're really conditioned to think about like holding our wounded feminine energy with a lot of contempt and being mad at ourselves and like upset when we have that wounded feminine energy within us. But it's something that all of us will embody and have those qualities. From time to time, regardless of how we identify in terms of gender. And the same can be said of our wounded masculine energy. But what I found when I was working with couples is the work is to sort of identify what energetic we're operating from in any given moment. So if I'm in my wounded masculine energy, my work is to start taking up space with the healthy feminine energy within me. So it's sort of the opposite energy in its more healthy form. And so if I'm in that avoidant energy and really like controlling and afraid of, you know, failure and not being what I believe the world around me needs to be, my work is to really trust in life and that if I am vulnerable, I'm going to be okay. And there's like a larger force that's holding me, to allow myself to be seen, to maybe make things a little bit lighter and playful. The feminine is that like playful energetic, the sensual energetic, all of that is feminine energy. And so if I can the feminine characteristics when I'm in wounded masculine energy. It's sort of how I shift my energy and relationally, how I bring a little bit of a healthier polarity. And then similarly, if I'm in that wounded feminine energy, so I want to be my own containment, my fierce protector. I want to sort of tap into my toolkit to remind myself of who I am, bring in that energy that are like really rooted in a sense of self and mission that is larger than this moment. And that's sort of me coming back into my healthy masculine energy, which is what I shift into when I find myself in my wounded feminine, if that makes sense. I know I just said a
Yes, it
lot.
does. How do we know that our masculine and feminine energies are not in harmony? Are there certain telltale signs that they're not in balance?
A lot of what I get into in the book is that like I give a like 4-part quadrant that like lists what each of these energetics are. And so you can sort of like, a lot of times I'll give them to clients and they'll like put them on their refrigerator, almost like a cheat sheet or like a cliff notes for like where I am energetically. And they'll be like, oh, Dené, I like noticed I was in my wounded masculine. And so I like really came into my healthy feminine with my husband and it really shifted our energy. But beyond that, if we want just like a quicker way to tell, if I'm in that avoidant energy, which is the energy of feeling like people need too much of me, people are, overwhelming and just like a lot of contempt energy, everybody everybody's annoying. I just want to be alone. Get away from me. That's probably my wounded masculine energy, right? But if
Okay.
I'm in that anxious energy of like really feeling like I need someone else in order for me to be okay, and I'm sort of clinging and trying to fix the energy between us, then I'm
That's a
probably in
wounded
my
feminine.
wounded
Let me guess.
feminine. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So you can kind of tell a lot of times by how you're feeling when you're in a
Uh-huh.
place where, and we know we're in our wounded energy because it doesn't feel good to be there. Like if we're in that wounded feminine
Oh
space,
yeah.
it
It,
feels like anxiety. And then when I'm in
hmm
that wounded masculine space, it feels like irritation and isolation and just like I'm mad energetically a lot of times, right? So it can kind of be a quick way to ascertain when we're there.
And I would imagine it has its roots in our relationship with our parents or
Mm.
the kind of relationship dynamic that was there between them.
Yeah, well, a lot of times the way I like to think of it in sort of the larger context of what we're grappling with, certainly I think the relationships we choose, especially, before we maybe do some of this work to make our more unconscious points conscious, we a lot of times are choosing relationships based on the pain points from our childhood.
Yep.
And a lot of times, like the parent that we felt like we didn't get the thing that we longed for from, will pick someone who sort of recreates that feeling within us, right? So our subconscious will tell ourselves, like, if this person can just see me in the way that mom couldn't see me, then it will mean that I'm worthy of that love that I didn't feel from mom all along. And normally it doesn't work that way because we pick someone a lot of times with a similar vibration in terms of their pain points. They're at a similar level energetically, right? So we sort of both continue to play out those wounded energetics with one another until we bring that consciousness in. But, a lot of where I've landed in terms of relationships is I really see relationships as like soul work now, and that they're like these divine assignments. So whatever's going on between me and another person, it's sort of the precise curriculum that I need at this moment in my soul's path to teach me some things about myself and where I am developmentally. If we're willing to see them as that versus like, if I can just get this person to change the way they're behaving, then I'll be okay, which is a lot of times missing the point of what's being evoked within us.
What does it really take to stop that tendency to attract a partner who
Mm,
we think on a subconscious level will help us deal with those wounds that we have from our past? Because I asked this question because I have a friend, she continues to do this, but at the same
mm,
time, in between the relationships, I know that she's doing the work. I know that
mhm.
she's going for workshops. I know she's working with a therapist, and she's really rocking in all areas of her life except her
Yeah.
relationships. What does she need to do to really get out of that toxic pattern of
That's
constantly
difficult.
choosing someone who's not good for her?
Yeah, it's tough, right? And what I love to say is I don't think our healing is ever the linear process that we're conditioned to believe that it is. Like we'll never be at that point of arrival. So your friend might really like grow and expand in her capacity to notice certain things relationally and maybe, have someone that she would have dated in the past who talks to her in a certain way and all of a sudden she's like, "Oof, I don't like that. Like actually that doesn't resonate, right?" And she might notice like a couple years ago, I might have kept going and ignored that the way that felt within me, right? But I think the thing of anxiety or feeling insecure or all of these things that we think of in these wounded energetics, they're a part of our human experience. So I think we have to give ourselves a lot of grace that they will come up and that we can build that muscle of learning to bring ourselves back energetically to a place that feels a little bit more grounded in that solid sense of self. But, as you were saying with your friend, I think a lot of times relationships are such a potent curriculum because they become the activation point unlike any other. So we can be just like doing great, chilling on our own, and then we get back into a relationship, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm activated again. What happened, right? Like, why is this bringing up so much within me? And the way I really like to talk about that is like, beautiful. That's just like such rich grist for the mill. Let's get in there and be in relationship with it. But the important thing, I believe, is to take a lot of personal responsibility around this is me being shown to me. So it's not so much like this person that's like, quote, toxic, or the bad guy, or like whoever this person is that I keep dating. He is showing me some sort of a shadow belief about myself that I need to get in right relationship with, right? So maybe that belief is that I can't have anyone unless they talk to me a certain kind of way. And that's something I need to like really challenge. Or, sometimes women of a certain age will be like, I'm at a certain age, like who's going to want me? Or I've got like 3 kids or whatever. Nobody's going to be interested in me. And that's really important for us to like do that reckoning work around like, there's a shadow belief here. And similarly to what you were saying before, a lot of times as we get into that shadow work, there's a core belief from something in childhood that brought those things to the surface. And it's like, okay, if it's like a historic belief, where did that come from? Like, whose voice is that telling me, like, you've got 3 kids, nobody's going to want to date you, or whatever the thing is? And is it true? What else could be true? Because we don't really attract what we believe, or excuse me, we don't attract what we want. I believe we attract what we believe to be true. So if on some subconscious level, I believe that this is the type of relationship that I'm worthy of, I will keep attracting that. But when I do the cleanup work around like, I am so unbelievably worthy of a person that sees me no matter what the circumstance, and that we have such a beautiful, fulfilling connection that is so unbelievably aligned. And I'm really not interested in anything that doesn't feel precisely like that. Then all of a sudden, because we have such a deep core belief in that as not only what's possible for us, but what we are worthy of, eventually we start to attract something very different into our lives.
Wow. Why couldn't it be more simple, Dené? We
Why
are
do we have to
so
go back and do all that shadow
complex.
work? Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that is the thing where we have to give ourselves a lot of grace, because it's for most of us a lifetime of this conditioning. And, especially for women. And, as we were talking about your friend, I think a lot of times, and I do a lot of work with retreats and facilitating groups for women. And we've had so much programming that teaches us that our worth resides in us being chosen, right? And that once someone else decides that we're worthy, then that means like we can take that deep exhale and know now that because someone else has decided, I am something, right? And is it true? And I think a lot of what we're seeing collectively that is shifting, and this is to me the rise of the feminine principle, is really women coming back into that space of empowerment and saying, I'm worthy because I say so. And I'm actually not interested in anything that is not aligned with the person that I have the potential to be. It will be a distraction. And so ultimately, I'm going to focus my energy inward, focus on becoming the person I want to be. And then when it's justified, because a relationship is so unbelievably aligned with the truth of who I know I am, that's when I'm interested in a partnership.